Like I said, I think the title might be the best part of the talk, but we'll see. Basically, if you know me, I've been talking about 1559 for a while. Not necessarily the biggest fan. You'll see why later. I got some nice charts for you guys. But I just so we're all on the same page, just wanted to go a quick explanation. You might fall asleep, it's okay. Basically, you have a block. Right now we have the 30 million gas limit. We have 15 million gas. We want to keep it at, on average, 15 million gas over time. So if the block is more than half full, we think the price for gas is too low, so we're going to raise it in the next period according to this formula. And if the block is less than half full, we're going to lower the price because we think the block is not full enough. And that's just basically how 1559 works. This is kind of, you might have a block that's slightly less than half full, the price would go down. Then you would have one that's more than half full, it would go up, and so on. Great. And then the idea is eventually we're going to converge to exactly the right price because of some online learning result or whatever, and we're all happy, right? So does that actually happen? No, right? I think we have some theoretical results that say it should work, but actually it turns out it matters a lot what parameters you choose. And if you look back at this formula, if you look at in the code is the actual parameter, this update parameter, which is delta, is basically set at 1/8. And the way we set parameters in ETH world is we choose a number between 1 and 5, and then we do 2 to the n. So I think we chose 1/8 because of that, basically. And then we kind of set and forget, and then we end up sometimes having this, which is basically, okay, the parameter's too big. We're spiking all the time. We're going in the course of, this is only 1,000 blocks. This is 3.5 hours, basically, or 3 1/3 hours. So we are going up and down all the time. From what the lowest here is around 35 Gwei, and the highest is 70 Gwei. Another way to look at this is in terms of the conditional expectation of gas used in the next block as a function of how much gas was used in the previous block. So if you have, for example, a block which is all the way empty today, then in the next period, you're going to have a block which is very likely almost all the way full. And that's kind of a reflexivity that causes a lot of the spikiness and jumpiness that we saw on the previous slide. So I would argue that anywhere on this slide, the bars in green and the bars in red are not things we want to see. That last green bar on the right side is basically you have too many transactions to fit in one block, which is pretty rare, about 3% of the time. And then the block is just too full to fit everything, and we have to save some for the next block. But I would argue that the optimal parameter minimizes this area here. So I just said, we set this parameter. Maybe it made sense at the start. I don't know if it did, but and then we just didn't do anything with it, even though we've made some major changes to the structure of Ethereum since London, which is when we introduced 1559. Right? This was a big one. Why was this big? Because it changed the way that blocks arrive. And the way that blocks arrive tells us how much information we get about what the demand is from what's in a block. So this was a week before the merge, the block arrival distribution, exponential. And a week after the merge, it was this very deterministic looking thing. Great. It's better for users this way, by the way. But that means that we should probably look at the parameter because now our information is different. Just to give you an overview of what an exponential arrival process is, it's basically if you said there's some probability that P that it arrives within this interval 1, and then you looked at the process where there's a probability P/2 that it arrives within the first period in the second row and the second period in the second row, and you keep doing that over and over again ad infinitum, you get an exponential arrival process. And maybe the easier way to look at it is just what does it actually look like? That's the probability distribution. The key thing about this exponential distribution is that the expected wait for the next arrival doesn't depend on how long you've been waiting. So when you go to get into a Bitcoin block, it doesn't matter how long you've been waiting, other than a few minor concerns about selfish mining, but without selfish mining, it basically doesn't matter how long you've been waiting. You're still expected to wait 10 minutes for the next block. This is a major difference, I would say, because even in a Bitcoin fee market, we know that between exponential and deterministic, you have very different equilibrium priority fees. And that's in the paper that this talk is based on, which is, I didn't mention the paper that this talk is based on is with my co-author, Malesh Pai, who also works with us. And basically, we know that the fact that it's deterministic, even with the same exact throughput, changes the equilibrium bidding in a first price auction, which is what Bitcoin uses, a lot. So probably it should change what we do in Ethereum also. The key idea, like I said, is that this 1/8 delta parameter that we set a long time ago and forgot about is too fast. It's causing 1559 to be fooled by randomness. It means that time-sensitive transactions pay high fees during fee spikes when we could just let them pay like slightly lower fees. And it means that less time-sensitive transactions who are willing to wait have to wait longer because of the spikes. So anytime there's a spike, if you're less time-sensitive, you're willing to wait, so you have to wait longer. Which is not that big a deal for the less time-sensitive people. They're not time-sensitive, but it does mean that the more time-sensitive people are paying more overall. So here's an overview of what that looks like in some simulations. Basically, the wait time for the low time sensitivity guys is on the left. Yeah, on the left, we have 1559. On the right, we have the priority fee. You can see that a priority fee distribution actually has way lower wait times than 1559 for like these low types. And that is going to make it so that if you're a high type, you have to pay more. So it's similar, like if they make economy class more uncomfortable, then that shouldn't necessarily affect the people who are sitting in business class, but it does because they actually have to pay more to avoid the penalty of sitting in economy, which is even more uncomfortable. So they raise the price on business class afterwards. And that's basically what a high parameter 1559 does. And I would say like we didn't necessarily understand this when 1559 came out because the static model of the original rough garden analysis and the analysis that was done at the time didn't consider users who were willing to wait. And so that's like the key difference between our results and what everybody else is talking about and was talking about at the time. When a user is willing to wait, you get these weird things going on. So what do we do? So remember this chart. We want to minimize this area. I'm going to propose a very simple change. You guys are going to be disappointed by how vanilla the change is. I'm really getting rugged here. Can like somebody make a insurance contract or something? Anyway, so here's the basic idea. If in the last period we increased the fee, and now the block is not full enough, we should have increased less. So we're going to decrement delta by a tiny little bit. If in the last period we decreased the fee, and the block is now more than half full, we decreased it too much, basically. And so over time, what this is going to do is we're going to, like, over the course of 2 weeks or something, we're going to very slightly adjust the delta parameter. And eventually we'll get to basically the optimal thing without having to set it manually on all core devs. And that is basically the proposal. I think a lot of people are going to say that this is not controversial enough. I do want to rip it out, but I also have political feasibility and engineering feasibility. This would be a very short change. As you can see, like it's maybe 10 lines with this conditional logic that you could put the conditional logic in one line if you're like a really hairy engineer. Anyway, to conclude, basically this would be the result if we do this change. Right now it's too high. It could have just as easily been too low as well, and that would not be good either. And basically we will see more steady fees, which makes the original goal of 1559, making the user experience better, even more towards the goal of 1559. And overall, actually, in equilibrium, you get lower fees for very time-sensitive transactions as well this way. And if you want to read about it, you can read it on mechanism.org. And also, if you want to see like the mathy version, that's also online. I gave a talk at TLDR that was like about the queuing theory that we did.